Hey guys, one of the most important things that you can do in an objective-based, team-based shooter is, of course, play with your team, but play the objective is really crucial. Now, I think on the second channel maybe, I have a video about like backcaps, as well as just what you might want to do while you're behind on the flank and opportunities that can arise as a result of that. But of course that stems from this same objective-based gameplay where it does not matter if the opposing team has a strong advantage if they are losing the objective. And how that plays into what I'm talking about today is with cap time, because pressuring the point and getting cap time is not a mere act of capturing the objective, although I guess in the most basal literal sense it might be, but it is instead better thought about as a separate tool that your team can leverage to win, the same way that you might leverage a pick or strong positioning or something to that effect. Cap pressure as well serves the same effect. Now I am mostly talking about last here because while you can in like a particularly, it is midpoint dependent of course, but in a particularly long mid, you might be able to pressure the cap and actually threaten to get the cap, and then as a result you know, have forward spawns compared to the other teams. Basic spawns. So there's like a possibility of that, and like process is actually maybe even one of them. But that's of course not a particularly common thing to happen. Man, those are stickies. However, where it really comes into play is during last pushes. And of course, I talk a lot about last pushes because last pushes are really important, and you know, you still have to be coordinated and have things go correctly in order to successfully win during a last push. But one thing that I do talk about is, you know, during those last pushes, one major component is for the defenders, how, you know, you set up your hold is quite important. Of course, the one thing super crucial is your explosives and what they're doing, because your demo should always have traps on the point if it's disad and you're expecting them to be pushing with their Uber, and your soldiers should ideally be alive and healthy, because those three components are the primary tools that your team has to stall out the cap and prevent the other team from capping, because of course, you know, if so train of thought is going. So of course your initial traps are the first line of defense, but during the entire Uber, your combo can't really be in a position to contest the point because the other team's just gonna be catching them with their Uber. So as a result, your team, the defending team, has to kite that Uber somewhere safe, and a lot of the time this involves kiting through spawn, actually. And during this time, you know, your demo, who is a premier area control spam class is not available to contest the point. So as a result, this is where your soldiers' health and availability comes into play a lot, because then your soldiers are going to be bombing the point, prolonging that cap for long enough for your team to fully kite and fully take positioning, and then your demo's now in a spot to properly contest point, and hopefully that fight can go long term and you guys can win as a result, because, you know, the longer that last push goes, usually the more it favors the defending team if all other things are mostly equal, right? So with that in mind, yeah, of course, there's a lot that goes into consideration of preventing cap time. And this is not just preventing the other team from capping, but preventing cap time itself is valuable, because again, cap time is a resource for your push and an advantage that you can press the exact same way that you would be able to what's the word I'm looking for? Leverage, yeah. The same way that you might be able to leverage a pick into last. And make a push much more successful as a result. If you get a lot of cap time during your Uber, then your odds of winning that that push go up dramatically. So it's something to consider. And the way you get cap time is, you know, usually with scouts, of course. I mean, they cap faster, and they are also just more mobile than any other class in the micro sense, so it's very easy for you to kind of dance around traps on point. And, of course, with the scattergun, you are the only class that can, you know, that gets regular 6's use in a last push, that can permanently delete stickies. I guess there is questions about whether, you know, quickies are allowed or not. And this does shine some light on why Europe may have banned quickie bombs, because being able to... And actually a perfect example right here. Our med is able to go for a cheeky back cap off of a very slim timing of just, you know, the two players that are remaining on the other team are pushing out, and then the third who's resupping. That's a very small timing and a tight timing window. And as a medic as well, like going for a back cap like that is risky. So that was only able to work because of the cap time we got during that push. What was I talking about? Scouts are good at clearing the point. And yeah, of course, if the point isn't trapped, and even if it is, like clearing a stick or something, in order to get some cap time during the Uber, you unflash your scout and then have him cap. This is tremendously helpful to have during a push for a couple of reasons. So, for starters, you know, as I've talked about, cap time in and of itself is a useful tool to have for the push and for the things that come after. But also, leveraging cap time and threatening cap time is a way to leverage and threaten picks as well and other advantages. Because, of course, as I talked about, you know, the stickies usually go first, and then the soldiers are going to want to be bombing point and trading with the guy capping. Well, if you do this properly, it is quite possible that you have your scout pressure the cap, and then as a result, a soldier bombs it, and if your Uber is still going, you just re-flash your scout, and now that soldier turns into a kill. And suddenly you have maybe a little bit of cap time and a pick, and everything's just going swimmingly for you during your push. So being able to abuse that cap time and abuse that objective in order to force certain positioning and vulnerability from the opponents that you then exploit, further proves that it's just an extremely useful asset to have in general. Right. So as well, like having cap time in and of itself, even in a failed push, is still beneficial, because when it comes to actually pushing out of a point, or even just refight potential, everything becomes much more dangerous for the defending team when there's actual cap time to consider. So some examples. I mean, the back cap threat is just way, way worse if the guy on last, who's back capping, doesn't need to be on the point as long. And this is, like, you know, seemingly obvious in just like a straightforward sense, but it's not uncommon whatsoever for a back cap to fail while getting cap time and while getting a lot of cap time. And in some cases, the team pushing out is able to get back there just before the cap gets finished, to the point where if it was a soldier, then like Pain Train would have made the difference, for example. Or, you know, any amount of cap time that they got during the failed push or whatever, that then the now defending team is trying to take second with. Yeah, just any amount of cap time, and suddenly that back cap now works. Spy back caps as well. You know, that's only a ×1, so, you know, any amount of cap time is going to enable that play, absolutely. And likewise, when it comes to a refight situation, which is not that uncommon. I mean, a team pressures into last or something, or even takes an Uber, and the other team who had disad but then ended up getting just in the nick of time, ends up using. So there's no Ubers in play, but it's not like strictly ad or dis. Like obviously it's a little bit of ad for the team that used first, but it's going to be negligible for the next couple fights at least. And you know, a team might look at that situation, a team with control of 2 trying to push into last might look at that situation and be like, I mean, if we can get through the doors, then we may as well pressure a bit. I mean, especially if you have a pick or something, then yeah, absolutely. It's not uncommon to see a refight on last. But if you have a lot of cap time during the initial push, a lot of the time, that in and of itself is enough to refight off of for a lot of teams, and it will be successful very often as a result. Because if you can get through a door cleanly, the other team has to be really careful about the point. Like their demo, for instance, has to make sure they're in a position where they can be shooting the point absolute, if not already having traps on it. Versus if there's no cap time, then their demo can play more on the doors and prevent people from getting in to begin with. But with a bunch of cap pressure from earlier, yeah, that's way less of an option. And as a result, you know, your refights are going to be much better. And a lot of the time as well, like, you will just be able to win without anyone even dying just because someone gets off the point for a brief moment. Like, the demo that's pushing is has the point trapped off, etc. So yeah, cap time, very, very important to do in last pushes. And also last pressures as well. Because I can think of multiple maps. I mean, basically every single map, if you get sufficiently deep into last during a pressure, like an even Ubers pressure, then trapping off the point and having a scout play it is really strong. And there are a few standout examples. One being, honestly, Sunshine. Like, if you can get space left side, then it's very straightforward for a demo to be trapping off the point and a scout to be playing it. And a lot of the time, that cap pressure alone gets the force, because the other team needs to run to the point and physically stop it from capping. Otherwise, they just lose. And they can't just stand on the point and physically stop it from capping because it's trapped off. So they have to not only block the point, but do so with Uber, otherwise they die. And that's just a really... I don't want to oversell how common this kind of play is, but it absolutely does happen on a game-to-game basis of the cap pressure. Of course, you have to get through the door and take space, and you usually have a pick going into that or whatnot. But the cap pressure alone, once you get to that stage, is what is forcing the other team. And another classic example is Gully Wash, because Gully Wash is unique in the fact that you can just slip a guy behind water, and then that player is available to just pop up on top of the point and start capping at any moment. So it's very common, actually, for Gully Wash sacks to incorporate a scout in water. And not only does this threaten just a win, and to be clear, you know, I have played many a Gully Wash pressure cook in which my scout water is just able to cap the point straight up and win the round without a single Uber being popped, just because the amount of pressure was too much for the other team. But that being said, even in a basic, like, even if that guy doesn't even commit to point, the mere threat of getting cap time and threatening that cap will force a soldier to play on the ring on top of the point. And just by sending a guy into water, you are already making the last way more vulnerable for the defenders and way easier to pressure into, because you are forcing a soldier off of a door and onto just point babysit duty. And that's valuable. And of course, you know, you can get as deep as you want about it. You can have a demo be trapping off the point, so that when, you know, your player starts capping, suddenly everyone starts dropping down to try and stop it, and then there's just a carpet there. But yeah, classic example, cap time just being so important on last, even in a pressure situation. So yeah, cap time, just something that you really should be playing with and playing around. Scouts should absolutely be looking to play the cap, because it shouldn't, you shouldn't be thinking of it as like, and now we're talking again about a last push situation, usually with like an Uber being taken or something. But this also just applies to general pushing into last. you can do that off of picks or whatnot. But you should not consider cap pressure as something that you're doing when you want to just cap and win. In the sense that, you know, you have different stages of a last push. You don't want to think about it as, okay, well, we are like trying to establish positioning as a combo here, and then the Uber fades. So in like the post Uber, we're going to be looking to reload and commit across, etc. Like there is no stage where it's like, okay, and this is the point where we cap and win. No, any amount of cap time at any time is going to be valuable. It does fade over time, sure, but way slower than it caps. And as a scout, it is absolutely worth seeking out cap time unless, you know, there's other more important things to be doing. Like if there's picks to be had, then absolutely get the picks, because those are generally stronger advantages than a little bit of cap time. Of course, if you cap the point like 90%, then that is arguably better than like a pick or even two, depending on the classes. And it just becomes so much easier because you just need a fraction of a second to get on the point. Like that is the... It gets to a level where even if the point is trapped, their demo just might not have fast enough reaction to prevent the... or to det in time. So think of it more as just something that you should be looking to slowly but surely rack up, is that cap time. Because, you know, later on in a fight, you're going to really appreciate the fact that you have the point 60% capped already. And it's so much easier for you to convert that into a round, right? And from a defender's perspective, you know, when the point is half capped, suddenly you're in a much less comfortable position. Maybe you can't go get a resup and get more ammo. Maybe you do have to play for those next couple shots, because if you leave that point unattended for even a little bit, might not work out in your favor. So yeah, cap pressure is really valuable in and of itself. But to reiterate kind of what I was saying in the beginning is it's not something that you should think of a discrete, I'm trying to cap the point type of way, but is very much, it's more so an advantage that you can leverage later. Because again, cap time does tick down, but it ticks down slowly. So if your scout can get some cap time during the Uber, and of course this is even discounting all the stuff I already talked about of like using the cap time to, you know, lure in a soldier for a pick or something like that. But if you can just rack up cap time early on in the push, just in general, that will pay dividends later on and will make everything way better going forward. Even including if the push fails, because that amount of cap time is just uncomfortable for a team that's trying to push out of last. Back caps become way more threatening, and in some cases, like based off the cap time alone, like a team might just not push, honestly. If things are like kind of sketchy, either or, they might go like peek lobby at the very least and see what's going on. In a case like that, if there's just so much cap time, they might just call it off. Not to mention all like the post-fight craziness that could happen, because of course, even if a last push goes catastrophically wrong and your team like almost wipes, maybe there's just like one person alive or something, even in a case like that, all it takes is someone not actively standing on the point, if there's enough cap time, to already be preemptively blocking the cap. All it takes is for that to not be happening for just a fraction of a second, and then any soldier bomb, any scout walking on, and in these cases as well, demo bombs onto point are enough to just get that fraction of a second, close things off. So you just have to play so carefully when there is that much cap pressure. So hopefully I've driven home the point that you know, pressuring the cap is a useful tool in and of itself, and not strictly a measure to just get the objective. It's not a discrete decision in that sense, and more so something that you leverage later on, and you just try to get the point capped off bit by bit. And yeah, it's a very important tool for any push into last. I guess since the half is here, I can just wrap up then. But yeah, I've probably reiterated it enough. Yeah, you just want to be working to get that cap time as it goes, because it is very, very important. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Hopefully all you players with your scouts that are too busy chasing picks instead of capping the point that I've trapped off and have been calming 5 different times that I trapped off, finally realize that there is utility in getting the point even if you can't finish off the cap. And yeah, I will see you guys next time.